Sripada Srivallabha Charithamrutham, Chapter 34, The Story of Sharabheshwara. Sri Dharmagupta and I travelled for some days and reached another village. Sri Dharmagupta and I were reciting the name of Sripada and recollecting his boundless mercy and compassion while carrying on with our journey. Someone or the other was giving us hospitality on the way. We continued the journey. In some places on a cart drawn by 2 bullocks. In some places we travelled on a horse-drawn carriage. In other places we simply travelled on foot. We considered it as a sportive grace of Sripada Srivallabha, who was indirectly looking after us in whatever way we travelled, or in what manner we received the hospitality from someone or the other. There was a special incident in one village. When we reached there, all the articles in the house of a Brahmin in that village was being thrown out into the streets. His wife and children were standing outside the house. The Brahmin took a loan from a money lender. He could not repay the loan. One day the lender accosted the Brahmin while he was walking and asked him to stop. The Brahmin stopped. The lender drew a circle with a charcoal around the Brahmin and asked the Brahmin not to move out of the circle. The lender demanded that the Brahmin should declare when he would repay the loan. The Brahmin replied that he would repay in 2 fortnights. However, he could not keep up his words because he could not get the money to repay the loan. The lender had already told the Brahmin strictly that he would occupy the house after the time limit if the loan was not repaid. The lender was troubling the Brahmin in this way. The Brahmin, his wife and children were in an helpless circumstances. All the villagers were watching this peculiarity as if it were a fun event, but none of them dared to convince the lender to give some more time for the repayment. Sripada places devotees in critical situations, tests their devotion and rescues them. Sri Dharmagupta was moved on seeing the miserable state of the Brahmin. He wanted to help, but he did not have any money at that time. I had no money, however. I ventured and said, "Sir, take pity on this helpless Brahmin and grant him an extension of time for 2 more fortnights. In the meanwhile, the Brahmin will come out of the difficulties on account of the mercy of Sripada Srivallabha. Think a bit calmly. I will guarantee the repayment of the loan by him." I spoke these words involuntarily. The lender spoke. "Okay, I will believe you. I am giving an extension of time for 2 fortnights to repay the loan. But you 2 travellers should not leave from here until the loan is completely repaid. In case the debt is not redeemed, I will not only seize the house of this Brahmin, but will also take you both to the village bench for making me grant an extension of time unnecessarily. Then you both will be liable for the punishment imposed by the justice there." I was worried about the promise I made. It was improbable either for me or Sri Dharmagupta to repay the loan of the Brahmin before the deadline. I made this promise like a fool, without thinking about the possibility or propriety of it. I must blame myself for this sort of thoughtless promise. It is not proper to blame Sri Vallabha for such matters. I threw Dharmagupta into a difficult situation along with me. This would be another sin. This example is enough to illustrate how troubles will arise if there is no control over speech. Where is the end for the sportive pastimes of the Lord? Only when such situations arise, either strong devotion will develop or the devotion will disappear. Sri Dharmagupta was unworried. He called Shankabhat, "Don't grieve over what happened. What happened is happening, and what will happen is all his playful pastime. the writing of Brahma is bound to happen. There were no provisions in the house of the Brahmin to eat meals. He had no money. He and his family members were going to starve without meals anyway. Now we too were added as their guests. By the grace of Sripada, we got shelter. We thought that was enough. I felt that Srivallabha is the sole refuge in times of hunger and total exhaustion. In times of trouble from lenders, when caught between the horns of a dilemma, not knowing what to do or what not to do, and in critical circumstances, we finished our bath and absolution for the day. We started reciting the name of Sripada Srivallabha, since there was no other way except for the recollection of his name in this situation. There was no oil, wicks, or other material that were needed for worship of the Lord with lights in the house of the poor Brahmin. Whenever we chanted the incantation Sripada Rajam Sharanam Prabhade, all the inmates of the house were repeating it. The children and old ladies who were neighbors on the street also gathered there. They were also chanting the name of Sripada with devotion. In meanwhile, some farmers also came to the house of the Brahmin. Word spread in the village that I stood as a guarantor for the repayment of the loan by the Brahmin, and that I was a disciple of a great person, and therefore I was prepared to redeem the debt of the Brahmin through my divine powers. Information was also circulated that I would not have given such a strong guarantee if I did not have some divine powers, and also that I was the great astrologer. The farmers of the villages were fond of betting. Some of them put bets that Brahmin would repay the loan, while some other put bets that he could not repay. Oh, what a bad destiny! I thought to myself that from a comfortable position I brought upon myself needless distress. By making an impossible promise randomly, I was struck into this crisis. I thought that I would be dragged before the village court if I could not repay the loan of the Brahmin. Sri Dharmagupta also along with me would land into troubles. In addition to this, some people also placed bets based on my hollow promise. At the very least, my ineffective promise had become a cause for betting of the gamblers. I believe that only refuge was the divine auspicious feet of Sripada, the divine entertainer who rejoiced every moment with his sportive play. These words, Satyam Vadum Nija Bhrutva Bhasmatam, which sage Narada said with Mahavishnu, came to my memory. I felt that Lord Narayana would observe the words of his servant, and that he would take the responsibility of making them as a truthful word. In the village, there lived a scholar named Sharabheshwara Shastri. He was an expert in Mantra Shastra. He was accurately telling about the past, present, and the future with the help of some ghost. Some bidders approached Sharabheshwara and submitted the matter. He sought refuge to the ghost, and it said that Brahmin would not repay the debt. With that information, the face of the beggars increased. The farmers of the village who were gambling started to bid hundreds of varas. They were very enthusiastic in betting because his episode would determine who was great, Sarabeshwara Shastri or Shankar Bhatt. I thought for myself, Lord Sripada, you have placed me amidst the gamblers. You prepared me to be dragged into the village court. You wanted to subject that poor Brahmin to difficulties after giving hope to him. You are also putting into trouble Sri Dharmagupta, who is a genuine disciple. I am unable to comprehend the inner meaning of this divine play. I only have a normal education, and I do not possess any spiritual strength. I do not know the art of astrology. I do not observe jap and tap. yogic exercises, strict principles, and devotion. I intend to write the divine holography of Sripada out of curiosity, but I do not have any qualification needed for that. I prayed that it was His will as to how He would rescue and uplift me. It is a proverb that a stubborn person is stronger than a king. Courage, which is hitherto not to me, begin to sprout in me. I firmly believe that whatever has to happen will happen, and that Sripada would save me through some means. Sarabeshwara Sastri had a sister. She also lived in the same village. One day she had a dream in the early hours of the day. The gist of the dream was that she had high fever, that her husband died, and that she became a widow. She inquired from her brother Sarabeshwara Sastri about the outcome of the dream. Sarabeshwara questioned the ghost worshipped by him about the matter. Then the ghost said that her husband, who was in another country, was attacked by robbers on his way home, and that they killed him after robbing the money. On hearing this, Sarabeshwara Sastri's sister wept bitterly. In the meantime, some people who were betting on the outcourse of the loan repayment came to the house of Sarabeshwara Sastri. They informed that the great person by the name of Shankar Bhatt was staying in the village at that time, and he was capable of doing and undoing things, that he was adoring a great deity called Sripada Srivallabha, and the real explanation of the dream could be obtained from him. He had not heard of any other Pandit who was greater than her brother till then. She heard for the first time about the Pandit greater than her brother, and wanted to submit her trouble to that great personage and obtain his blessings. She was brought to the house where we were staying. She prayed to me in a pathetic way, "Brother, please save my Mangalya." Some charmed turmeric rice grains which were given by Sripada to the farmer during his marriage at Panchamaveda was still with me. I had some sort of divine inspiration. It struck me that because of the charmed turmeric rice grains which were given by Sripada himself, the Mangalya of the lady would be protected if I gave those charmed turmeric rice to her. I said to her, "Mother, take these Mahakshatas. These are golden rice grains of turmeric. Preserve them in your puja room. Your husband will join you in a few days." This is true. The news was conveyed to Sarabeshwara Sastri by the farmers who were betting on the outcome of the loan repayment. He became enraged. His sister announced that if her husband returned alive to her house, she would not only pay the loan amount of the poor Brahmin, but also accept Shankar Bhatt as her preceptor and would worship Sripada Srivallabha. 3 days passed. In these 3 days, the farmers were bringing food to the house of the poor Brahmin where I was residing. They laid wagers in my favor. If I succeeded, they would also win and will gain a lot of money in the wager. After 3 days, on the 4th day, the brother-in-law of Sarabeshwara Sastri returned safely from that distant land. The joy of Sarabeshwara's sister knew no bounds. She thought that her auspicious married life was returned on account of the Maha Akshatas given by me. When some robbers were about to kill her during her journey, a Muslim Rizla killed the robbers and rescued her husband. On the greatness of Sripada's boundlessness, the arrogance of Sarabeshwara Sastri was destroyed as my prophecy came true. Sarabeshwara Sastri repaid the loan of the poor Brahmin who were staying. Sarabeshwara Sastri requested Sri Dharmagupta and me to accept hospitality in their house. We agreed. Sarabeshwara remarked, "Sir, I worship Dhumaratri Devi, one of the Dasha Mahavidyas. According to the Tantra books, she was actually Ugratara. If she is happy, she will destroy all diseases and sorrows. If she is angry, she will destroy all comforts and pleasures. When surrendered to her, all calamities would be destroyed and all riches will be gained. If she is angered, hunger and thirst, quarrels and all kinds of poverty will result. I obtain the grace of the Great Mother. The Great Mother wards off all ill effects of exorcism and deadly exercise of killing. Her devoted worship is unavoidable for all people suffering from witchcraft and who want to protect initially. I worked for the good of the people without any greed for money. Afterwards, I became avaricious for money and demanded much money from those suffering from afflictions of Uchanta and Marana exercises. This was not acceptable by the Great Mother. In the meanwhile, I got a connection in the world of vital force with a very strong spirit of a dead person. With the assistance of that spirit of the dead person, I derived an unusual power of telling about the past, the present, and the future. These means will ultimately turn those who worship them into miserable ones. One should not worship them. In case they are worshipped, the money earned through those powers should be utilized for the use of the public and should be donated to the distressed people who are in want of money. By doing that, the spirit of the dead one will constantly be in our control. If it is not done like that and money is earned selfishlessly, then those spirits will give us some wrong predictions and will subject the worshipper to shame and turn him into a pauper. Not only that, but sometimes even death may take place. The mass of merit in us will be depilated due to selfishness. Then the spirit of that dead person will expose us to 8 varieties of difficulties. I was unwise, not being judicious of the money being earned and lived as a selfish person. Therefore, the spirit of the dead escaped from my control. It gave a wrong prophecy and brought embarrassment to me. I faced agony. You are my guru. From today on, please accept me as your disciple. I said, Sir, there is no other guru for this world or creation except Sripada Srivallabha. If I arrogate myself as guru, then I will have to experience more insult than what you have experienced this far. When we were coming from Karangudda, Sripada told briefly about the Dasha Mahavidyas. He added that remaining details will be taught at appropriate time and at appropriate extent. I learnt from you about Kali and Dhumravati of the Dasha Mahavidya. Sir, kindly do not take me as your guru. I was struck here under some peculiar circumstances. Now I came out of those circumstances. Sripada is an adept in creating difficult problems. Here he is very dexterous in pulling his devotees out of such difficulties. Constant remembrance of the name of Sripada is the only means to achieve in this world and in other worlds. Here we come to the end of Sripada Srivallabha Charithamrutham, chapter 34. Om Sai Ram.